Two brothers grew up in the same house. Same parents, same neighborhood, same basic lessons about money, same middle-class pressure to build a good life. By the time Brian and Andrew reached their early 40s, their financial lives looked almost identical. Brian earned about $120,000 a year. Andrew earned about $120,000 a year. Both were married, both had two kids, both lived in the suburbs, both had steady careers, and both had about $50,000 saved for retirement. But at 65, their lives looked completely different. Brian had about $540,000 saved, a mortgage still hanging over him, and monthly expenses high enough to make retirement feel risky. Andrew had about $1.58 million invested, no mortgage, no car payments, and enough flexibility to stop working without panic. Same family, similar income, similar starting point. So, what created a difference of more than $1 million? Not luck, not inheritance, not one brilliant investment. It was what each brother did during his 40s. That decade quietly decided everything. Your 40s are powerful because three financial forces collide at once. First, your income is often near its peak. Second, you still have 20 to 25 years for money to compound. Third, your lifestyle is under pressure to expand. Bigger house, better car, better trips, older kids, college costs, a stronger desire to finally look successful. That is the fork in the road. One brother turned peak income into freedom. The other turned peak income into payments. When Brian entered his 40s, he received a promotion. His income moved from about $105,000 to $120,000. For the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe. His 30s had been tight. Young kids, mortgage pressure, bills, career stress, and the feeling that every dollar already had a job. So, when more money came in, his first thought was simple. I worked 20 years for this. Don't I deserve to live better? That sounds reasonable, doesn't it? But after 40, better can quietly become more expensive before anyone notices. Brian started looking at houses. The reasons made sense. His current home was fine, but it felt small. The kids needed more space. The school district across town was better. He wanted a real home office. And after years of working hard, the bigger house felt like proof that he had finally made it. The real estate agent said, "With your income, this is very doable. You're entering your peak earning years." It sounds like a compliment, but sometimes it means you now earn enough for the bank to sell you 30 years of payments. Brian bought the house. The new mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance added about $1,900 a month compared to the old home. That is $22,800 a year. Over 10 years, that's $228,000 before investment growth. If that same $1,900 a month had been invested from age 40 to 65 at a 7% average annual return, it could have grown into more than $1 million. The real cost was not just the monthly payment. The real cost was the future freedom that payment replaced. Andrew looked at bigger houses, too. He wanted one. When he visited Brian's new home, he felt the quiet sting of comparison. Maybe this is what success is supposed to look like, he thought. But Andrew ran the numbers differently. He did not ask only, can I afford the payment? He asked, what will this payment stop me from doing? That one question changed his future. Andrew stayed in his smaller home and redirected a large part of the difference into retirement accounts and a brokerage account. At the time, Brian looked ahead. Andrew looked cautious, but the math had already started moving. Then came the cars. Brian's old sedan needed repairs. Nothing catastrophic, just annoying. But in his new neighborhood, surrounded by newer SUVs, the old cars started to feel embarrassing. At the dealership, the salesman said, "With your income, this is a comfortable payment." Comfortable payment? How many comfortable payments does it take a man to feel uncomfortable? Brian signed. The SUV added $680 a month. That's more than $57,000 over 7 years, before insurance, repairs, registration, and lost investment growth. Andrew replaced his car too, but he bought a 4-year-old Toyota with low mileage, reliable, cheap to own, and not impressive. Brian laughed and said, "You could have bought something nicer. You're not broke." Andrew said, "That's exactly why I don't want to look rich through payments." At the time, Brian thought that sounded boring. 20 years later, it sounded like wisdom. A few years into their 40s, both brothers received raises. Brian's raise added about $18,000 a year to his income. He told himself, "We'll breathe a little first, then I'll get serious about saving." But a little became a pattern. More restaurants, better vacations, more delivery, more subscriptions, more activities for the kids, small upgrades that felt harmless. Within 6 months, almost the entire raise had disappeared, not wasted in one dramatic mistake, absorbed. The raise didn't make Brian wealthier, it made his lifestyle hungrier. Brian didn't stop saving completely, that's important, but his effective savings rate dropped. The bigger house, the SUV, and the new lifestyle pushed him from saving around 15% of income towards something closer to 4 or 5%. At $120,000 a year, 15% is $18,000. 5% is only $6,000. That $12,000 gap doesn't disappear for 1 year. It compounds for decades. And some years, when college bills and repairs hit at the same time, Brian saved even less. This is why his retirement didn't explode upward, even though he earned good money. His income rose, but his future only got what was left. Andrew handled raises differently. He made a rule. Half of every raise went straight to investments or emergency savings before it touched daily life. Not at the end of the month, not if anything was left, immediately. If his raise added $18,000 a year, about $9,000 went towards future freedom. The other half could improve life now. Andrew wasn't refusing to enjoy life. He was refusing to let lifestyle inflation eat every new dollar. Brian gave his future whatever was left. Andrew paid his future first. That difference also changed their careers. Brian's fixed costs made him cautious. By his mid-40s, his life needed every paycheck. When a higher-paying role opened at another company, he looked at the posting for a week and closed the browser. What if it doesn't work out? Andrew asked a different question. What if staying comfortable cost me the next 10 years? Because his expenses were lower, Andrew could take a calculated career risk. That move eventually added about $25,000 a year to his income, and most of that money went straight into investments. Brian's income rose, Andrew's income rose, and his freedom rose with it. By the second half of their 40s, Brian still looked more successful. Bigger house, newer SUV, better vacations, better photos. Andrew looked ordinary, but one brother was building visible wealth. Invisible wealth is boring. Nobody claps for it at dinner. Nobody sees your lower fixed costs. Nobody compliments your emergency fund. But invisible wealth is what gives you options later. The next test came through the kids. Brian's daughter was accepted into an expensive private university. When she said, "Dad, this is my dream school," Brian did not see a price tag. He saw the little girl he once carried on his shoulders. So he said yes. Parent Plus loan, help with rent, a used car, extra costs every semester. Each decision felt loving. Together, those decisions reduced his ability to save during the most powerful compounding years of his life. Andrew faced a similar moment with his son. His son wanted a private college that cost far more than the family had planned. Andrew did not dismiss the dream, but he said, "We will help you, but we will not destroy our retirement for a logo on a diploma. We will compare state schools, scholarships, work options, and reasonable debt." His son was angry. Andrew felt terrible, but he understood something Brian did not. Children can borrow for college. Parents cannot borrow for retirement. At 50, the difference became harder to ignore. Brian had higher income than ever, but his monthly obligations were heavy. Bigger mortgage, SUV payment, college debt, higher insurance, more expensive lifestyle, and less room to breathe. He still looks successful from the outside. That is the dangerous part. A person can look financially healthy while being financially fragile. One night, Brian opened his banking app before bed. His checking balance was under $1,000. Payday was 8 days away. The mortgage had cleared. The credit card was due Friday. His daughter needed help with rent. The SUV needed service. He stared at the screen and thought, how am I making more money than ever and still living this close to the edge? That is the trap. He was not poor. He was simply overcommitted. Andrew's life at 50 looked less impressive, but it had more margin. No expensive car payment, lower housing costs, a growing investment balance, a real emergency fund, and a savings rate that increased with every raise. When layoffs hit his company, Andrew was nervous but not desperate. When a consulting opportunity appeared at 55, with less income but more control, he could consider it. Brian could not. Brian heard about Andrew's opportunity and said, "That sounds amazing. I would love to do something like that." Then he paused. "But it's too early for me." It was not too early. It was impossible. That is the difference between working because you want to and working because your lifestyle requires it. By 65, the results were clear. Brian still had money. He was not broke, but he had about $540,000 saved, a mortgage with years left, and monthly expenses that made retirement feel risky. He could stop working only if he downsized, cut spending sharply, delayed retirement, or accepted constant financial stress. Andrew had about $1.58 million invested. No mortgage, no car payments, and a lower-cost lifestyle. He did not need to be rich in a flashy way. He needed to be free. The million-dollar gap did not come from one genius move. It came from 4 leaks. Housing took the first chunk. Car payments took the second. Lifestyle inflation swallowed the raises. College pressure reduced savings during the decade when savings mattered most. And because Brian's fixed costs were high, he lost career flexibility at the exact moment he needed it. Andrew did not win because he was smarter. He won because he protected the decade when money still had time to multiply. Now picture both brothers at 70. Brian is still checking whether Social Security withdrawals and part-time income will cover the next repair, medical bill, or property tax increase. Andrew is deciding whether to visit his daughter this month or take a trip with his wife. Not because he earned dramatically more, because his 40s bought him options. That is the lesson. Your 40s do not just decide how much money you make, they decide how much of your money stays yours. $1 invested at 40 can work for 25 years. $1 turned into a permanent payment at 40 can make you work for 25 years. Same dollar, different master. You finally have income, you still have time, but you also have the strongest temptation to prove that you made it. Bigger house, better car, better trips, better school, better image. And none of it looks crazy. That's the problem. The most expensive mistakes of your 40s often look normal. They look responsible. They look loving. They deserved. But if every "I deserve this" becomes another payment, your future self pays the bill. An expensive life asks, "Can I afford this payment?" A good life asks, "Will this protect my freedom?" If you're in your 40s, audit 5 things: your house, your cars, your raises, your kids' education costs, and your fixed monthly payments. Not because you should live small forever, because every one of those categories can either buy freedom or quietly sell it. Brian and Andrew started in the same house. One turned his 40s into proof that he was successful. The other turned his 40s into a machine that bought his future freedom. At 40, Brian looked like the winner. At 65, Andrew had the life Brian thought he was buying. Do not only ask whether you can afford a better lifestyle, ask whether that lifestyle will still let you retire free.